Hey guys, welcome back to Chris and Retro. Tonight's video is drawn out of a conversation I've had recently. Actually, a couple of them, but one in particular really kind of triggered this thought in my head. And we're going to talk about the tapes that we play, and um, and look at the good and the bad of tapes in our history, and some of the things that we do as prophets of our own demise. And so those will be some things we'll talk through today. When I was growing up, uh, I had we had a Radio Shack radio cassette player with a radio and an AM FM radio. So it was like one of those high end things, and just a small little radio. I had it next to my bed, and we had cassette tapes, and they were two-sided cassette tapes. And those cassette tapes, you'd wait, you'd have to hit record and play at the same time. And I would record songs off the radio so I could get some of my favorite songs. And you never knew when they were going to come on. You only kind of sort of guessed when they come on. You hear the first couple beats of the song, and then boom, you'd hit that. So you never really had high quality, but at least you got some of a good part of the song that you were trying to listen to. Share with you something here just to take you down memory lane. Hopefully, you find this enjoyable.
The usual, sir.
Even after 500 plays, our high-fidelity tape still delivers high fidelity.
High quality commercials tape. So that tape was the higher end of a cassette tape. It was very desirable.
Accept, it's worth it.
So you get the idea. We had so that was the cassette tape. So you put it in the cassette player and you hit both record and play, and then all of a sudden you'd be able to get the songs out of it. So apparently, so that was one of the higher ones. So there's more expensive blank tapes, and you probably get them in like a package of three. Sometimes you can buy the single ones if you were trying to save some money on them. But it was really quite ridiculous when we look at the technology we have now on our phones. It has more capability from a sound quality perspective than that whole stereo system that took up half the room. But anyway, those are the tapes I'm referring to, and there were two sides. You had an A side and a B side. The A side you could record all the way through, and you hit the end of it, you hit the B side. If you brought a pre-recorded cassette, I had all the Guns N' Roses, I had AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, all those, and a bunch of country ones as well, and all those I had Metallica and some others. All those cassettes had two sides. So you'd play your songs on the one side, flip it over. You'd have to flip it over in the cassette and play the other side. Now I'm educating the younger people that are on here. Many of my age will be like, oh yeah, I remember that. So I tell you that, and what does that have to do with anything? Well, it's very similar to not the cassette itself, but the reference of tape. When you were in the recovery journey, a lot of times people say, play the tape back or play the tape forward. How's that look? And basically they're asking you to refer to your story. Now, when I started this video, I was talking about a conversation I had the other night, and that prompted this whole thought process. And it really does resonate, I think, for me, and hopefully it does for you as well. Um, I find, and with the person I was speaking with, he found the same thing. And you may run into this as well. We'll take our worst moment in our history to addiction. Now, this is speaking to addiction, and maybe it applies to other areas. I can only speak from experience with addiction. We'll take the worst situation that came out of that we had to face. So those of us that are alcoholics and those of us that have other addictions, there are many things that we do that are shameful and embarrassing, but some things actually come out in the light, and we have to, those moments are oftentimes turning points, but they can be tremendously embarrassing. For me, it was, while the other two DWIs were embarrassing, the first one was probably most embarrassing because it was, at that point in time, people didn't realize I had a drinking problem. Unless you were in the bars I was in, but I was doing a pretty good job of hiding it to those around me. And that first DWI was pretty embarrassing because I didn't want to see that in the headlines or in the news. And we were in a small town at the time, so I knew it'd make it there. But for the most part, it wasn't really published that much. So I kind of dodged that bullet a little bit. But the third one is one that's very traumatizing for me because of all the legal stuff that was all around it. Now, I'm not a victim because I did those three things, but it's still the events around that and the shame and embarrassment around that stuff. If I see anything close to that going forward, I have a lot of triggering effects of that. I'm like, man, here we go again. So, and I was talking to my friend, and he had the exact same issue with an event in his life that all things, even though they're going so good, we take it all down to, and I've shared this in other videos, is that no matter how far we get away from that ground zero or that rock bottom, incomprehensible demoralization, we get beyond that moment And we forget that just because things aren't going well doesn't mean we're all the way back there, but it doesn't mean it's not triggering when we ponder the situation we're currently in and we find a way to tie it back. Now, the tapes we play in those situations is we'll take that worst case scenario and we'll tie everything around it as almost onion layers to that original situation that was so embarrassing or so hard on or so difficult to get out of. So we'll take that and any event that comes along in the future, if we're not careful and recognize it for what it is and accept it for what it is, we'll tie it back to that as if it's still we're not better in some cases. And in some cases, we'll say, oh, here we go again. But in that way, we take our traumatic event or whatever is going on and we make ourselves prophets of what the future is going to look like and what the present looks like based on something that happened in the past. And in reality, they could be two completely different situations, completely disassociated from each other, one not impacting the other versus and vice versa. Just simply our mind replaying a very awful experience. And with things in the current experience we're going through, having some of the earmarks of it, we immediately go back, layer it all together, and it starts to really build in our mind. And a lot of our triggers can really lead us back into addiction, active use again. In those cases, if you've climbed out of a pit, it's equal to looking back down in the pit and pondering the pit the whole time. When we look backwards on these things, we look down in that pit that we climbed out of, and we tie all things that are going on now. And we always look back in the pit because of what's going on now. We've never moved forward. We're always looking over our shoulder, and there's no hope to be found backwards. So just like that tape, that I think it was a Memorex, I don't remember which one it was. You flip the sides of that tape, and now there's another side of that tape. There's a whole set of songs in that tape, and that's what we do a lot of times in a recovery life. We flip that tape over. And that second stage of life, when we start talking about playing tapes there, we play them backwards and forwards for one purpose, and that is to get ourselves to move forward. You play backwards to say, okay, these types of behaviors could lead me back there. It doesn't mean I am there. It just means that these types of behaviors in my past, I've seen that it takes me back there. And what did it get me? Hell. So I play that tape back just to remember, man, these things I'm doing could put me there, but I'm not currently there. The second part of the tape is to play it forward. How do both our good decisions and bad decisions play out where we can reasonably project? And I think if we take a minute to pause in our impulse decision making, both in our depression and anxiety and the choice and the feelings that we have around certain circumstances, but also in the actions that we take in those moments, by playing these tapes forward and backwards in a positive way, that second side of the tape, the new life that we're living, we start to make more conscious decisions about it rather than emotional reaction to something that we're tied to from a traumatic perspective. We're actually just making decisions based on what we've learned through those lessons, the tools that we can apply, and the steps forward we want to take to get the life that we know we want. Because as we play that tape forward from a point of making good choices, we know it plays out way better than if we make those choices in our bad moments. Otherwise, it plays out pretty bad. So I would draw to this analogy as we think about this thing. There's really both of those are painful. So if I find myself constantly living in the history of my life, constantly focusing on don't drink today, please don't drink today. If I make those things my deity, make those things the center of my focus, I'm basically putting myself on trial, self-trial, every single day. Every single day. And that takes a lot of work, a lot of stress, a lot of taxing stuff on your mind. It's exhausting. It's depressing. It's self-defeating. And those self-fulfilling prophecies are really manifesting themselves even just because of our loss of focus. We might not even be saying outwardly our life's a mess, but our focus is in a place that is looking towards the mess and not looking towards the future that we say we want. In those places, we're kind of putting ourselves on trial in a courtroom. We're putting the work into our trial. We're both the judge and jury, as well as the defendant in that court case, and we're doing it all to ourselves. It's utterly chaotic and it's exhausting, and it proves no benefit to continue to stay there. Now, the flip side of that is equally effort. It's like a gym. It's a workout where now all that pain that you're putting yourself through versus the courtroom that you're putting through a bunch of pain that gets you nowhere. It just keeps reliving the past over and over and over again. Whereas in the gym, the pain and things like that you feel are giving yourself strength, stamina, self-confidence, better health, all these things, stress release. The gym itself in our emotional state, that working those muscles like we do in good recovery programs or 12-step work or all of it, we're working towards our goals as opposed to being in court where we're working against ourselves. I thought it was important to bring this up tonight because I think a lot of times we get they say stuck in our head. We spend too much time in there. We really do. But it's not just in this solemn, depressed state. Oftentimes we're doing it just reliving things based on trying to find some way to tie this point to that point way back then. Because it has to be that way. It must be. It always plays out that way for me. And we get in this mode of ridiculousness. And if you're focused that way, you literally can take, at least from my perspective, I could take most of the things in my life and find a way that's just evidence that things are sucking and that's all falling apart again. Because the center of it was that I once was in a very traumatic, embarrassing situation. And in my fear of not wanting to go back there, I'm constantly on trial, constantly in my own courtroom, constantly having my own judge and jury after me, the defendant, in my own head, handling that situation. As opposed to the healthier side that says I once was there, I'm learning from that mistake, and now I'm correcting it by making myself in the gym. I'm focused on me as a trainer. I'm focused on myself as the athlete. I'm focused on myself of growth and development and doing more today than I did yesterday, more reps, more weight, working different body parts. All that stuff is all progress and strength and stamina. Hope you understand the analogy. It's both of us. In both cases, we're working at each other in some way internally. One is working against ourselves. One is working for ourselves. And I hope you see that. Just like the A and B side of the tape. We supposedly flip the tape around in that cassette player, as you saw in that video where you slide the tape down in. Well, to get to the B side, you literally had to pull it up, turn it around, and put it back in the original ones. And that's how we would do that. So I'm asking you today, as you ponder these things and the things that, these recent lessons and the conversations I'm having, where are you with your recovery journey? Where are you with your life? Are you in court with yourself all the time based on your lowest moment? Or are you in the gym growing and building each body part and building your confidence and your strength and your stamina so you can handle more difficult things that need to be moved, as opposed to destroying yourself by staying in your head and staying on trial? We play tapes. You can play them all kinds of ways. You can play them forward that projects forward to what your new life is, or you can play them backwards to the things that have already happened. There's no chance of changing them, and they're going to be what they're going to be. I personally think the better option is to move forward and look forward. And that's one of the things that we try to do on the show is make sure that you always understand that hope is available to you if you just keep moving forward and keep making progress. We don't have to be perfect, but we do strive to grow. And this is one area that my friend and I, through our conversation, we're recognizing that we both need to grow in this area because it's really easy to slip back in that tendency, and it's usually just one thought at a time. Become a fighter today and a warrior for your future. Work your programs. Actually work your programs. Sammy and I did our show we do our special signature moments, and we just did one on Sunday, and it was talking about step one in the 12-step program that we participate in. And that's a work step. It's the dividing line between what we once were and what we're becoming. It's the tape turning from the A side to the B side. It's the dividing line. And there's work to be done. And that work is not to put us on trial anymore. That work is to go out and get a few more reps out in the gym. Maybe sometimes that's the actual gym, but I'm just thinking of it figuratively for this conversation. Guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope this was useful to you. Please put your comments in here. I'm getting more comments in this section. I really appreciate it. Some of them are a little bit heart-wrenching as you share some of your stories, and I feel you, definitely. I hear your pain. Sometimes, having gone through those journeys and having walked alongside, my partner in her journey, I hear your state, and it's tough. But thank you for tuning in. I hope that this can be some sense of encouragement, and hope that you're getting tools out of this show that can help you live a better life. I don't always practice what I preach. I'll just be honest with you. What I'm trying to do is just share with these lessons I'm getting in my life, and hopefully there are things that can land for you and maybe be successful for both of us as we're fellow travelers through this journey. I believe in you, and I hope you believe in me too. We're all a community. Thanks for tuning in. Please subscribe. Please subscribe, share the show. If you know somebody that can benefit from this message, or if you're somebody that's coming alongside somebody that's struggling, perhaps you can share this. A lot of things I do share with you are not just addiction based. The context is addiction based, but really think of them as high performance work. We can use this stuff anywhere. It just happens to be, I find it to be tremendously powerful in a life of recovery. Thanks again. And between now and the next time we're going to talk, I'm going to do every single thing I can do to stay out of trouble. And I hope you do too.